The debate over police use of deadly force front and center again tonight, following the fatal shooting of Rayshard Brooks by an Atlanta police officer late Friday night. Tonight's panel, ready to weigh in. Civil rights attorney Robert Patillo, former Boston Police Superintendent Daniel Linsky, and former member of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, Steve Rogers. Welcome to you all. Good to have you tonight.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I want to start with this. The New York Times, this is how they characterize the law in Georgia. They say it states that officers may use deadly force if they reasonably believe a felony suspect has a deadly weapon, poses an immediate threat of physical violence, or if they have probable cause to believe that the person has committed a crime that involves serious physical harm or the threat of such harm. Daniel, I want to start with you. If you've had a chance to look at it as a former officer, what do you make of this case?
Yeah, so this case isn't as clear cut as the Floyd case, where we saw clear probable cause in the videotape that a homicide had occurred. It's not as clear as the Walter Scott case in South Carolina, where Walter Scott had entangled and got the taser away from an officer, was running away without engaging in a confrontation. Unfortunately, there was, a physical assault on the officers beforehand, and the suspect grabbed the officer's taser and ran away with it, and then in fact engaged the taser against the officer. So, I have the benefit of 20/20 hindsight, where I can watch the videotape. I can know that his fellow partner was also up and engaged in the foot chase with him, not injured, not out of the fight. Know all of the facts and circumstances with 20/20 hindsight, and I'm hoping I would not have taken that shot. However, when you are met with force, the officer has the right under the conduct in our use of force laws that he can use one level of force above, and potentially an officer could be disabled by a taser. He's got he's got a firearm on his hip that could easily access. We've seen officers killed with their own firearm. Knowing all that I know now with the hindsight of 20/20, I hope we wouldn't have done that. However, it's not what I know that counts. It's what the reasonable officer in that officer's shoes. We don't know the officer's medical condition. If a taser hit would have, if he's got a AFib or some type of pacemaker or other device, that a cardiac arrhythmia event could cause him death or great bodily injury. So we've got to look at it through his eyes at that time. That's what Bream v. Corner says in these types of cases. It's a tragic event for the family, for the victim, for the officer, and for the community. It's a tragic loss at a time when tensions are high, and certainly not something we needed going forward when we're trying to figure out how we police our communities in an effective way that the community can accept and the police are able to perform.
Yeah, and Robert, you got to think that officers are so nervous about everything they're doing right now. There are body cams here, so they know that they're being recorded, but they're trying to be careful because no one wants to kill somebody, a suspect, unnecessarily when there's not a threat of deadly harm immediately to them or to others. So how do you walk through this case? Because there are calls for murder charges. I think based on what we've seen so far, and there's going to be more that comes, I think it would be hard to get a conviction on that particular charge.
Well, I don't think you get to the point of murder, but I do think you get to the point of reckless conduct. What Chris Stewart, the attorney for the family, presented today is that there were additional shots fired, one of which hit a passenger vehicle which was in line at the Wendy's restaurant and nearly struck somebody. There was a car with a family in it, and that bullet could have struck that family. There was no immediate risk of death for those officers. You had somebody who was passed out drunk, and frankly, I think when we're talking about this discussion about defunding the police, this is what people are talking about. When somebody is passed out in their car in a drive-through, you send an ambulance. You take that person to the hospital, you get them an IV, and then you get them into alcohol treatment to find out what is going on. So when we put police in this situation where you send them into a confrontation like this with nothing but a gun, a taser, a billy club, and pepper spray, then there is no positive outcome. This is exactly what people are talking about when they say we need to reevaluate how we conduct law enforcement in this country.
Yeah, and Steve, what about that assessment of having alternate means or people to show up when it appears what officers, it looks like what they were assessing here and trying to handcuff him is that they thought he may have been operating that vehicle under the influence of something. How do you balance all those equities, Steve?
Shannon, what's unfortunate is that most people passing judgment on the police were never in their lives in a shoot, don't shoot situation. They never had to make a split-second decision like I have and other officers have during the course of our career. I think what's important for people to understand is that, especially in this case, and this was a tragic shooting, no police officer wakes up and wants to kill anyone during the course of their duty. But here's a situation where the police were very, very calm, very professional when they approached the vehicle, up to the point where what happened? The suspect resisted. And not only did he resist, he fought and fought and fought. They're rolling around the ground, and then he grabs a weapon, and believe me, a pen could be a weapon. He runs away, he turns and fires at the police officer. So the police officer had to make a split-second decision based on what my colleague said a few minutes ago on whether the officer felt that his life was in imminent danger. So I believe that as we move forward, and I've mentioned this a few times, I believe that lawmakers and others should go through police tactical training courses where they are put in situations to shoot and don't shoot. And they'll have a better understanding of what police officers face as they're running into these situations. This was escalated not by the police. It was escalated by the suspect, and all he had to do was what? Comply. We hear that all the time. Just comply with the police.
Yeah, and just it's heartbreaking to watch the lead up to this and to see the very civilized conversation and the respect they had for each other, and for it to end this way. We'll watch because there will most certainly be investigations into every bit of this, and we'll stand by for that. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, is the